After over a decade of using YNAB, I can confidently say that it has changed my financial life. But it wasn't love at first sight, or should I say, first trial. In fact, I only even tried YNAB after testing out Mint, which I hated. Quicken, I'm an accountant, so I was sure I was going to like it, but it ended up being super buggy. Personal Capital, which is now Empower, and several others. I just wanted something that I could customize, something that would link to my accounts to save me time, a feature that YNAB did not have at the time I signed up, and give me my net cash flow. I was not looking to learn a new way to budget. I already knew how, for God's sake. But after another round of trying other budgeting apps, YNAB just stuck with me. I did want to track all the money in my accounts, not just my income. I did want my categories to roll over from month to month. I wanted the accountability that came from having to cover overspending in that zero-based system. Eventually, I realized how much value there was in knowing exactly what the purpose was for every dollar I currently had. And I recognized how beneficial it was to only include money that were currently in my accounts and not my future expected income. It was the method that made me come back to YNAB. Learning a new way of looking at my money was exactly what I needed. And I have never looked back. YNAB is so customizable. I've changed the way I've used it throughout the years based on what's worked for me at that time and the season of my life. In YNAB, you can set up your budget categories and group them however you want. You can track whatever accounts you want and choose to include them or not include them in your budget. I did share my 2026 YNAB setup, both the plan or budget side and the account side, in my previous two videos. But what really makes the difference isn't the setup, it's in the processes. The method of YNAB is what makes the difference. In this video, I'll share my regular YNAB processes and how I use YNAB on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. On a daily-ish basis, I usually categorize my transactions on the mobile app, usually while I'm drinking coffee between when I am doom scrolling the news and I'm getting my real work done for the day. So I'm going to show you this part on the mobile app. When I first open the YNAB app, it will show me the transactions I have that I need to approve or categorize. So usually every day I'll just quickly go through and select those and approve them. Once in a while, there are ones that need categories. Usually by now my budget's pretty set because it does remember those, but I'll go ahead and categorize any that need categories still. And then YNAB will show the underfunded or the overspent categories. So once I have gone through the transactions, I'll go over to the plan and I will scroll through and look for those underfunded categories and just move some money around. So I try and keep it within the same category group when possible. So in this case, I had some overspending on eating out, and I took it out from another eating out category and from meal kits just to try and kind of keep it within that group. And then I just go to the next one and do the same thing. So in this example, I have kids' clothing, which is overspent, and I take part of that from my own clothing category. And now I just kind of look for another category that I don't think that I'll need the money in, or that's a little bit probably overfunded. So in this example, I'm just taking it out of movies and events because I know we probably won't use that this month. And then there still is a little bit negative, so I'm going back up and taking that out of the meal kits. So this is really the process. It's a lot of just going back and forth. I wanted to quickly show the YNAB widget too. You just click a button and you can add a transaction. I usually use this for eating out and groceries, mainly the things that I tend to overspend on during the month. On a weekly basis, I log into the web app and I do some additional steps. Overall, I do find it way more intuitive to use the web app, and I really only use the mobile app for categorizing transactions. First, I make sure all of my transactions and my accounts are up to date, and then I shift over to do some planning. To do this, first I make sure that I've categorized everything prior to looking at my plan. Otherwise, I've had many times that I sort out my plan just to discover that there's extra either unclear transactions or pending things or things that I forgot to categorize. So here I will look through, we're going to skip the brokerage one for now and come back to that in the other card. You can see here I have 2 transactions that pulled in that need to be approved, and then I have one that needs a category. And when my grocery budget goes negative, it's because of the Girl Scout cookies, and my daughter has not just one but several friends who are selling Girl Scout cookies. The second thing I do on a weekly basis is I reconcile my accounts. One of the most frustrating things in YNAB is when your account balances don't match between YNAB and your bank. This isn't a problem with other apps because the balances and the transactions just kind of pull in separately. But in another app, you also wouldn't know if transactions are duplicated or being missed because you don't have this same level of connection. If you only have 1 week's worth of transactions, it's so much easier to find any discrepancies when they come up. So I do recommend reconciling weekly at a minimum. We'll go over to this Visa card. And what I usually do is I just start by clicking the reconcile button. And if the balances match here, I know I'm good to go. So I'll indicate that. And then I do go through the cleared transactions. So in this case, I suspect that this is something that my bank hasn't pulled in yet. It was a scheduled transaction that came in, and that's why it's uncleared. As part of my process, I do go through every account other than cash, which I probably don't reconcile it as much as I should. If there's any that when I click it, it doesn't match, this one doesn't match because it actually doesn't currently match right now, but I would log into my bank account and I would see what the balance is per YNAB and what the balance is per my bank, find out what the difference is, and see where I can find that discrepancy. Once that's done and I'm confident that my accounts are all set, I analyze my spending. So I'll go over to the plan and go through each category line by line. Here I'm asking myself, do I need to make any changes to my spending between now and the end of the month? And do I have enough money in this category for the rest of the month? So in this example, if I had income, I would make sure to pull that up to the assigned. I'll go through each one and just make sure the amounts look good. So I will manually go ahead and add some additional funds to cover this spending. It's close enough to the end of the month. I don't think that I will need any more for groceries and for eating out. I know I don't have any more coming from my meal kits because I do try, if I have overspending in one category group, I do try to keep the money movements as much as possible in between the categories in that group. I have one more thing that's overspending here. And I am a little bit more meticulous about going category to category when I do this in my real budget. So now I have about $46.07, and we're just going to take that out of this gifts and birthday parties. The last thing I do is plan ahead for the next couple of weeks. Because I'm really meticulous about entering my scheduled transactions and keeping all of my upcoming bills updated with the new amounts, I can look at the upcoming balances in my checking account and just ensure that I have the money where it needs to be for the next at least 1 to 2 weeks. My income does fluctuate pretty wildly as an online business owner, as you might expect. So I do need to keep an eye on this much more closely than when there was just this steady paycheck coming in every month, almost by magic. So if we look at the checking account, just a quick note, I do always have show running balance on here because you'll need that to do this. And then I look at the current balance and the upcoming things, both income and expenses, I add to the scheduled transactions. Here's credit card payments, things like that. So I know that at no point my account goes negative or anywhere close. So that's how I plan ahead. For your weekly tasks, I highly recommend either setting up an event on your calendar for the same time every week, or at a minimum having some sort of reminder on your phone. I would estimate that it takes me a maximum of 10 minutes a week to do this. Now let's look at monthly processes. So this is where I close out one month and then I budget for the next month. This is usually done during my first weekly session of the new month, so it replaces that. This probably takes me, I would say, around 10 to 15 minutes. If I'm completing monthly tasks within the first couple of days of the new month, I first try and make sure any pending transactions are reflected in YNAB. Otherwise, I've had many times that I thought everything was in there for the month, and then I have to go back and revise my prior plan. And then it always happens that I have less money than I thought I had, so that's a bummer. In addition to checking the pending transactions pulling through in YNAB, this is the one time I do log into each of my banks and I just double check that everything is included in YNAB through the end of the month. I also log into my brokerage account on a monthly basis, since I do have that set up as a manual account. And I will go ahead and determine how much I have made in interest and total up my dividends for the month and add those here as well. My monthly process does start with the same exact steps as my weekly process. I'm categorizing, reconciling accounts, analyzing spending, and planning ahead, but I'm simply taking a closer look at budget categories and deciding whether I want those extra funds, if there are any, to sit there and roll over to the next month or move them to another priority. I'm doing this at the same time I did the weekly ones, so there's only a couple things. I talk about how I have income categories in one of my other videos, but really the main thing here is I'm going to pull those out and find another spot to put that money now that I have that income. I'm going to go through each line item and just determine, do I want to leave the money in that category or do I want to move it somewhere else? And then any funds that I have available, I'll assign those. So here I know this is going to be like a pretty straightforward one. We're going to go ahead and just put the income there for now. I'll talk about this month ahead category, and then I'm just making sure things aren't overfunded or underfunded essentially. Because I'm always at least 1 month ahead in YNAB, I go ahead and keep a month's worth of expenses in this holding category. I have my goal amount there too, just to make it clear. So at the beginning of the next month, I can take that money out of the holding category, and now I have that money to assign to the other categories in the month. There are some automated ways to do this in YNAB. Specifically, you can just click this underfunded button and it will fill in the categories. But I actually like to do this manually because it prompts me to think a little bit more about my upcoming month and the things that are going on. So I will assign all of this money out manually to each of the categories. And while I'm going through, I ask myself things like, is there a big holiday going on this month? Are we taking any trips? Does anyone have a birthday? Is my car due for maintenance? And those type of questions. I did want to show, this is part of the YNAB process, that this amount is never zero when you first take a stab at your budget for the month. So you always either have extra money to assign or you've over-assigned money. So part of the process is to just go back and forth between your categories and decide how much more you want to put in a category or what you need to move money from. Once I get to this all money assigned box, I am set for the month, other than of course I do my daily categorizing and my weekly tasks, but it's all set up all in one go. Then when I have incoming funds for the month, instead of assigning them directly to categories, I'll go ahead and fund this month ahead goal back up to the $7,500. I would be very surprised if I spent more than about a total of an hour all month updating and maintaining my YNAB budget. And I'm sure that that hour spent is some of the best ROI I get on my time. It absolutely saves me money just by having this awareness of my spending on an ongoing basis and also being able to pivot and change throughout the month. But honestly, while I'm all about saving money, it's the confidence that comes from the method that's the reason I'm still using YNAB. By being directly involved in the day-to-day management of my cash flow and then being prompted to consistently think through where my money has gone, where I want it to go, and by having that accountability when I overspend and have to move money from one priority to another, I feel like I have control over my financial life. I don't worry about money. I don't get to the end of the month and wonder where it's gone. I don't feel unsettled when a surprise bill comes in. I keep a consistent process, honestly, so that I don't have to think about money as much as I did before. I would love to know how you use YNAB and what your processes are in the comments below.